Now we have the render. As you can see, we have enough details. I didn't increase the sampling. I just put it 4 back again to speed up things. It's just didn't take much, 2 minutes. And if you will increase to 16, it may take 4 to 6 minutes, but it will be big, like full HD. And we have everything we need. This model is low resolution model. This is what we will receive, and you can enhance it by smoothing, by doing some operations, working with the shader. But it's not the purpose of this tutorial. This course is meant to show the complete work of similar scenes. Now you see the displacement is there. You can enhance the reflection, increase the reflection by just putting this close to 1. And also we can do that here also, just by bringing this into the white. And that's it for here. So let's start importing some of the particles. I will close some windows. Then I will change the renderer to Krakatoa. Then I will start importing the particles. So that's it. Now I will kill these lights because actually I don't need them. But I will keep this light because it will be a guide for me where's the key light. So let's go to this. I don't need really to display the mesh here except when I import them. The purpose of importing this as a proxy is to be able to display it as points. But for now, let's just import some of the particles. I will do that using PRT loader. From here, we can go down to ThinkBox, for the Krakatoa. And here we can find BRT loader. Press anywhere in the viewport, and then try to bring the file here. So I already reduced everything as BRT from RealFlow, and I will start importing these into our file by going here. I saved everything in this file. So I can import the foam as example. Again, we'll have the same problem because it doesn't really fit with the scene, but we can do something about that. First, we don't have really a clear image about the particles. What we can do is that we can jump down, and here we are displaying just 1%. Let's change this to every nth particle first. Now we have more particles, and let's increase this to like 10%. That's it. So now we know exactly how it is showing. What we can do is that we can rotate it, start rotating everything. Just make sure to keep the pivot as it is. And if you notice that we have this edge here, so what we can do is that we can rotate it in this direction, 90 degrees, always 90 degrees. Then we can rotate it 180, but it will not fit here. So let's go back and try another way. If I will rotate it like this, 180 degrees, and like this, 90. and let's zero out its position just to make sure we are working on the right position. We notice that everything is good, but it's totally flipped on this axis. And what I can do is that this is x-axis. I can just bring this and put minus to this value. I will have everything fit 100%. But we needed to do this because we did a mistake by the preferences again. This is the first particle. What I will do, I will copy it. Or let's copy it in its place. So I will just come to the mesh here and I will try to convert it into preview. So it's lighter. Now you will see that the scene is much lighter. And here's the particles. I will go here and I will clone him. Then I will import. Let's first rename this one. The first one, foam. And for the second one, I will rename it as splash thin, which is the hybrid one. And I will go to the modifier, kill this one. And I will re-import everything from the same place, but I will import splash, not the dam, but the splash. Wait a little. Now we have it. Let's just make sure it's here because I can see it. Let's move it a little. Yeah. So we need to fix its location. Let's change its color just here to recognize it. It didn't change color, but what I can do, I can hide the foam. So let's make sure that it is fit. I think it's fit, but we can't make sure except if we will see the water. And I think it fits. So let's unhide. Oh, let's just copy it again. And here we can go and add the dumb particles. Choose the first file and it will come on its place exactly. Let's see. It should be right. I don't have to really do much of work to make it right. But this is it. So I can unhide now the foam. And we have already a huge amount of particles now. We have almost 40 million particles. And we have the mesh also. That's it. And let's start lighting the scene and adding some shaders for the Krakatoa. Now I did just small changes, which is I hided the sea because I don't want to see it actually, and it's just heavy on the scene. So I have only the particles, and I'm displaying almost 10% of each particle. Also, I recolored everything, so I have three colors for three kind of particles. I renamed the splash dumb. It was splash one because we duplicated from splash thin, and I have everything ready. But what I need now is to shade everything and start seeing some lights. So I deactivated the light, the V-ray light, which we left previously, if you remember, just to know the position, because we will emit the light for the Krakatoa particles from the same position. But before we do anything, let's try to render one frame and see what we will get. Of course, before that, I will jump to Krakatoa. So this is the Krakatoa layout. It may look complicated, but actually it's so simple. And Krakatoa is one of the most amazing particles renderer, dot renderers, and I think it's the fastest. The idea about it is that you can render with motion blur, with depth of field, and you can manipulate the particles after importing them from RealFlow. The idea about Krakatoa is that it comes with some modifiers such as magma, which enable you to enter the properties for the particles coming from RealFlow, such as velocity, vorticity, and all kind of let's say attributes. And by being able to do that, you can rechange their colors, even their behavior. So I can shade each one of these particle systems independently, but I will not do that, because basically what I will do is that I will shade them all in one way. You can try to do that, but you have to just work a little with Magma. It needs really a different course, but for now, all we need is just to shade them with one shader. Also, I redisplayed all these particles just by going here, selecting the particle, going here. I reshade everything as small dots. Here we can change this, and also we can display how much particles here just by pressing get information, and you will get. So as example, for the splash dump, we have 2 millions and something, but we are displaying 10%, which is 217,000. Now let's change few things and see. I will render one frame before, and let's see what we get. We will get nothing because we don't have lights. And to exactly know what's happening, we can go here and see this window, which can tell us what's happening, which is a schematic. So if you notice here, I have render particle, it's red. So if I will see what's happening, I will say there's no lights here. So I can right mouse button and I can say create default light. Now I have light, but I need to reposition it in a way which is the same way I have the light for the sea. So here's the light. I can just bring it up, put it almost in the same spot. I have the other light. I look at it from left view, have everything. All I need to do here is to activate the shadow, and later we can just change of the map setting, because it's important to sometimes it's important to have more resolution. Already I will change this to 1048. No need to do much work here now. Let's see the results, and based on that we will change things. I of course deactivated the light for the V-ray, so the only light in our scene is the spotlight, and I can go and render again. So I will expect to see something now. And my main idea now is to know exactly how to shade these points. I have many colors for the points because I have them under their own colors, as I said before. So to change this color or to change their properties, I should go to Krakatoa window here by going to render setting. And from here, I have override color. I would color all of them the same color, which is just something like a little less white than this. So I can go down like this example here, and I can see again what kind of color I have for all the particles, because it's override all the particles colors, of course. So I have everything colored, and I think it's a good start now. We can start looking at how we can see the shadow from here, and at the same time apply some difference lighting. Just from here I need to see more light, and from here I need to have the sense that there is ambient light. And in Krakatoa I can add two lights, main light, which is the key light from here, and ambient light, or the just fill light from here. I have another way to do that. In Krakatoa we have something we call it the emission. And in the emission, if you just activate this thing, what you will have is that ambient color, general ambient color, and you can control its value from down here. So I will activate it here, and we will try to render everything again to see what we will have. Remember that the whale should be here, and now we are not having anything. It's just we are rendering everything including the whale, because we didn't identify the whale as matte object. This is what we'll do next. So before I continue, I would say that the most important factor here is this layout, which defines the density, or how big or small the particles. And the law for this is that you need to have a lot of particles, because the best solution when you make their volume very small and like density very small, in the same time you have a big amount of particles. Sometimes I saw some artists, they just increase the density, but they have really low amount of particles, which seem not natural and just not smooth enough. So the final pass density is the main density for the particles. I can increase this number to whatever I want. Here is a multiplier. So instead of adding zeros, I say -1 means that I have the total density of 0.5. If I will say here 1, I actually have 50 for the density, which is really high. Let's see how it will look. It will look white more than we need, and it will look big also, because now we increase their volume. So this is exactly what we don't need to see. And sometimes you will see something like that, even your settings are good. Directly you know that the main problem is that from the shadow map, and the big problem is from the scene scale. Now my scene scale is good. Because of that, if I will put the default setting, I will start seeing something really nice. So I will go ahead and put -1. Maybe I will increase the density a little to 6.5. And here for the emission, this one defines how powerful or strong is the ambient light. If I put 0 here, means that I'm having the total emission strength like 1, which is bigger, much bigger than 0.1, the original value. I will render again to see what I will have. Also, let's just discuss or add some shadows. Here we can consider the light density and everything. See, we have a lot of ambient light now. Everything is like shining. We don't need this. So the solution is that we can come here and reduce this at least to the total 1 multiplied by 10 with the power of -1, which is the total of 0.1. So now what we will do is that we will try to change few things and see if we will add, as example here, the light density. This defines the light density, and again it's light density and a multiplier. So we have 0.5 for that. Let's see what we will have before we just comment on it. Also, just remember you can add a reflection for these particles. You can really work on them to have a good shading, but we don't need really to go that deep. We will get the result we will need without digging that much in it. So I think we are good now to add the whale, because I need to have the matte for the whale here. Else I just have everything covered with particles. Even I can't composite this because Krakatoa doesn't render geometry, it just render particles. I need to have the particles and a place for the whale. And this is what we'll do next. So let's add the whale and its tongue and the eyes, every object here as a matte object. Again, for the sea, we need to add the sea as a matte object also. But in our scenario, the sea is below everything. So I don't think really we need to add it as a matte object in this case. So what we will do now is we will define a selection set for the wheel by going to the listener, and I will choose the whale, his eye, the other eye, and the tongue, everything here. And I will go here and we'll call it whale matte. Now we can go here and we'll find down here available named selection set. So we can just throw it here and we can activate enable matte object. Now I increased the resolution and I reframed everything. I can just bring it down just to see very fast result. So I will say 1200 as example. Let's see. Let's render one frame and see. So basically, there's one thing which we shouldn't forget now. First, after we finish just set up the Krakatoa, I want to go back to one thing related to the mesh. So if you remember, we were talking about exporting the mesh as a Limbic file. And I experienced some problem in exporting the mesh from Reflow as a Limbic. I would prefer to export it as bin, because now we will see that there is something wrong with the mesh. Let's just finish up from here and we will jump to that matter. So now we can see that everything is nice and cool. Actually, there's shadow here, and this is exactly what we want. And other than that, now we have a matte for the whale. If we come closer, we can see the edges. The idea is that it's not just so clear or so clean here, the matte object. The only way to fix that is to go to the render setting in Krakatoa and see if we have some kind of anti-aliasing or sampling. Yes, we have super sampling here. If we increase this to 6 or 8, we will have the chance to clean up the edges a little. Also, before I jump to the next thing, we have enable motion blur. We can just press this button and we will enable motion blur. Also, we can define the shutter, the matte segment, which means that the object here will be taken in consideration. So I would say if I have 4 here for the matte segment, and here I can say 180 as example, and let's just, I would say 3, and let's see if we can get some result. I will render this. Again, this feeling here for the splash dump is the one which gonna make us feel like we have a mist. We can add the mist for sure. And I was talking about it in RealFlow, how to export it. It's really easy, and I will just show now how to import it here. But in general, we really don't need to do that in this scene. If you will add it, that's your choice. For me, I would say that we have a complete scene. I will see other frames now, but in general, we have everything we need. Also, for the C, we have the displacement. Now we can see the first frame, the first layer or pass of the motion blur is rendering. If we just try to see the rendering window, it says rendering passes 3 of 4. Now we have 3, still 2, or just the third, and the fourth. We have also 10 million particles on the scene. So when we have the C, as I mentioned, we can just snap the particles on the surface of the C, and we can do that in RealFlow. That's an option. The other option, or the second option, is to render the particles inside the water alone and the particles outside the water alone. And we can do that just by going to here and render passes. If we will add some passes, we will have the chance to add occluded layer. Occluded layer is the particles which are occluded by matte object. And for that, we need to show the C. So if I will go to the Scene Explorer and I will show the C here, and this is it. So we can select it by going to selection name and choosing the ocean. This is the ocean, and we display it as points, if you remember. So what we can do, we can create a selection name for the ocean matte, and we can do the same we did for the whale, adding this into the matte selection name or matte objects down. I already added, so we have everything we need now. If I will render now, we will have this path, which is the Krakatoa occluded, means everything occluded by the objects here and here. And we will also have the regular path, which is the Krakatoa, which is not occluded above the object which we see in the normal frame. And in the composite, we can do this. We can put the first layer, the occluded Krakatoa. Then the second layer, we can put the C and the whale. And the third layer, we will put all the Krakatoa. And between those, we can just do coloring. So we shade the particles which is supposed to be occluded differently than the one which is, on the surface is white 100%. This is done automatically in Phoenix FD as example. And if we will snap all the particles to the surface, we don't need to do anything. That will be good. But for our scenario, we look at everything from above. So we don't have really a problem of not rendering these. But this is a solution. Just remember it. We have a solution now for all the particles which is hidden by the displacement, which is just a little amount of height here, which we can fix like this. But there's one problem here. Let's take into consideration. Krakatoa occluded. If we will go here again and see the matte object deals with geometry. But here we have proxy, which is a V-Ray proxy. So if we need this to work really well, we need to go here and display this as a mesh. It will take a little time, but now we will make sure that when we render, Krakatoa will see it as a mesh, because Krakatoa will not understand proxy of V-Ray. Now in this case, we will have everything right, and we can render and see the passes. It will just take a little time because now it's loading the mesh. The other problem, which I will start talking about after this exactly, is there's offset. There is an offset between the whale and the mesh itself. And this offset can show clearly when at the beginning, at the end, and at the end. So we can fix it simply by offsetting the mesh, but it will not fix it all the way from the beginning to the end. Let's see and discuss what we can do about that and why is that happening. So I will go to shaded mode, and I have the mesh now, so I can start rendering. I will come back after the render finish.